Okay, buggies, you are going to have your Unit 9 post-test tomorrow. I'm just going to review a couple things to make sure that you're good and that you understand everything you're supposed to do. Remember, a lot of this is percents. Remembering you're doing is over of. You are finding easier ways to, if you need to reduce the fraction or you need to make it bigger or whatever so that it makes it easy. The whole first page is about making certain amount of points or certain amount of shots and what percent that is. And I think the majority of you did a really good on that. I'm going to have you use your math test from before with all the corrections I've made so that you do not have to go back and do any new ones. I will upload the test again if you can't find yours, but I think, and I'll have Grace do this for us, I think, well, she would have already done this by the time you hear this lesson, show you how to search up an assignment so that you can get your old assignment and just fix the ones that I put a circle around. Remember, there is a lot of points at the bottom of the first page because you're filling in a table that has fractions, decimals, and percents. And so just to make sure you all remember how to do that, got you. They'll give you this, okay? And you have to turn that into a decimal, remembering that is 3/10, right? And then you're going to have to turn that into a percent, remembering that you'd have to go over one and then over another one, which means you'd have to put a 0 there. So that would be 30%. Okay, so just don't forget that. Or if you had 1/2, okay, you already should know in your little tiny heads that that is 0.5 or 0.50, which would be 50%. And you know what? If they give you the percent instead, you can also go backwards, right? Because when you're going back from this, you know that this would be 0.25, because essentially you just take that percent and just go back 2, and that's where the decimal would go, 0.25. And that is 25 over 100, because that's how we write a percent. 25% is 25 over 100. You could reduce that if you wanted, because 25 can go into itself once and it can go into 100 4 times. But if you did 25 over 100, you'll still get credit. So you have to be able to go back and forth, okay, from a percent to a decimal and back, okay? So that is one portion, all right? You also get to use a calculator, much like we did in math review, okay? So if they gave you 7 divided by 16, it says use a calculator to rename each fraction as a decimal. I want you to write the whole thing. So just so you know, with 7 over 16, if you put that into the calculator, you would get 0.4375. And that's what I want you to write. All of it, not just part of it. I want you to write everything that you see, okay? And that's the first part. And then it says use a calculator to rename each fraction as a percent. So for this case, for this problem, I asked you to do that as a decimal. Let's pretend it was the same one, and I want you now to do that as a percent. Well, friends, go ahead and put 7 divided 16 in your calculator, and you'll get this number, all right? To find out the percent, we move that decimal to the right 2 times, and that's where it would go. So that would be 43.75%, and that is exactly how I want you to write it, okay? 43.75%. All right, so the first 3, you're just going to write exactly what you see from the calculator. You'll do 7 divided by 16, and you will get 0.4375, and you write that. But when it asks you to use a calculator to rename that fraction as a percent, same process, 7 divided by 16 in your calculator, it gives you that answer right there, and you have to turn that into a percent. And that's taking that decimal right here and moving it over 2 times to make that. Got it? Que bueno. All right. Then we move on down, and there, friends, is a whole big box of area and perimeter. I'm going to need you to pay attention right now because I feel like friends have forgotten how we find area and perimeter, okay? If we're dealing with a rectangle or a square or any old four-sided shape, okay, the area is the base times the height. And the perimeter is all the sides added up. All sides add. Okay? So if I had 7 and 2, the area of this guy would be 14. Friends, some of you got that answer, but I will not give you credit, because by the way, it would say something like this. If you do not put centimeters squared. Area is whatever the unit is squared, okay? 7 times 2. The perimeter of this guy would have been 7. And if this side's 7, then this side's 7. If this side's 2, then this side's 2. 7 plus 7 is 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, what? Centimeters. Okay? Now, it does ask you to do the number model. So the number model for the area would have been 7 times 2 equals 14. And for the perimeter, you would have written 7 plus 2 plus 2 equals 18. That's the number model. Or you could have said 14 plus 4. That's fine with me too. But you need to, that's what the number model means. So how did you get it? Remember, area is base times height. Perimeter is adding up the sides. Okay, we're not done because there were some triangles in the mix and I just had friends who totally didn't even realize what the heck. So let's look at this. Okay, and let's call this side 10 and we'll call this right here 8. We're going to call this whole bottom 12. Okay. Now for the area of a triangle, I want you to think in your head before I write it down. What is the area of a triangle? Triangle. It's 1/2 base times height. Okay. And perimeter, yes, is adding up the outside. Just by the way, that's a 10. Okay, so let's look at what the base is. The base is 12, right? So I'm going to do, and you could do 1/2 the base. If you wanted to do half the base right now, you could. And half the base would have been 6, okay? I like to just do the whole thing. I like to do 1/2, and I'm going to do 12 times 8. 1/2 of 8, 16, 8, 96. 1/2 of 96, 96. Divided by 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. 1, bring down my 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And I get 48. We're going to pretend those are centimeters squared. Okay? If it would have been easier for you to do 1/2 of, like you could have done 8 times 6. Okay, and that would have also given you 48, and it might have been easier. I just, however is the easiest for you. But that's how you figure out the area, okay? And so when they asked for the number model, then I would have said it is 12 times 8 divided by 2. That's the number model. Now, for the perimeter, I would have done the outside 10 plus 10, which is 20, plus 12, which is 32. So that the perimeter, this would have been the area, perimeter would have been 22 centimeters. And friends, you're just adding up the outside. I didn't even need the 8, so I would have written 10 plus 10 plus 12 as my number model. Okay? Now, that seems pretty easy. What if you had a shape that looked like this? Okay, well, for this, it's still base times height, right? That's for a rectangle. And for a triangle, because you might have to go down straight like this, right? Because there are triangles over here on this side. There's a little triangle here, and there's a little triangle here, right? So I'd use base times height right here, but for these guys, I'd have to do 1/2 the base times the height, all right? So let's say this was 12, and let's say the height right there is 4, and I'm gonna say this little guy is 5, okay? Which means this little guy over here is 5 and all the things. All right, so if right here is 12, right? And 12 times 4, that would make the inside 48, because 12 times 4 equals 48. That's the inside, okay? And we have 10. I have 4, 5. I think they put him down. I'm trying to look if I could turn this around so that this was the base and the height. Because I think that's 5 times 4 divided by 2 equals 20 divided by 2 equals 20. 20 divided by 2, because I have to do half, equals 10. And then I would add well, I don't even know why I'm doing that, because I didn't even need to do that. It's just 1/2 the base times the height. And if I've got the height, I've got this. It was adding it up that I needed it. Okay, sorry, I didn't even mean to do this. Erase this part. Didn't mean to confuss you. Because this just gives me the height. So I knew that was the height of it. Okay, so 12 times 4 all around. 12 times 4. And then the reason they gave us those outside parts was for us to add it up. So it would be 12 plus 5 plus 12 plus 5. And that would have given you the perimeter. So just remember that when you are doing perimeter and area. There's also a whole big section, turning this back over this way, on parentheses, all right? So if I had 40 plus 30 times 7, and I said it's going to equal 490. If I looked at this problem right now using, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, I would have to do this first. 30 times 7, because I'd have to do, please excuse my multiplication first, right? And 714, that would have been 210, added a 40, and I get 250. And that is not the answer. So I would have to put parentheses here to change this. Let's pick a different color so that you can see what I did. So I'm going to do this, okay? And now, when I do 40 plus 30, I get 70 times 7, okay? And 7 times 7 is 49, and add a 0. And now I've got it. So you are going to be putting parentheses in. Just so you know, your parentheses can be around more than 2 numbers, and that is a hint because you will have to for one of the problems on the test. All right? Okay. And then we are down to problems with things costing a certain amount of money off, okay? And that's all is over of. So let's say Susan bought a coat that cost $200. Okay? And she had a coupon for 10% off. So she had a coupon for 10% off of $200. Okay? And I do know this fraction. It's 10 over 100. Okay? And I know of, I don't know is. 100 can go into 200 twice. So if that was times 2, then this is times 2. So x equals 20. Okay? So she's going to get $20 off. Okay? That's going to tell you how much she gets off. And then they're going to ask you how much did she actually pay? And that's going to be 200 minus 20 bucks. 0, 8. And she would have paid $180. So that's how you figure that out. Now, they're going to give you a couple different problems today. Like one of them says, Randy plans to buy a color TV. The model he wants costs $200 at Elmart, okay? And $220 at Owls. In the spring, Elmart put that TV on sale for 1/4 off. So that would be 1/4 off of $200. Okay, that's one of the stores. So remember that the is over of and figuring out how much you get off at that store. Then you have to minus that from 200 to find out what the price is. Okay, and then Al put that same thing off at 30% off of their price. And Al's price, 30% off of, Al's price was $220. Okay, so 30% off of $220. Okay, now remember you can make those zeros go away, then 10 can go to $220, do the same times 3, and you'll find out how much you get off. Then do $220 minus that. You have to figure out which place is cheaper, and there's not a huge difference, but there is a difference. So be really careful and show all your work. And then finally, there is some division and multiplication with decimals, okay? Remember this. If it says 56 times 4.2, it says for each problem below, the multiplication or division has been done correctly, but the decimal point is missing. Please write a number model to show how you estimated and then put the decimal where it belongs, okay? So technically, you don't even actually really have to work this problem because they give you the answer to it. It's 2352. They put that there. You have to put where the decimal belongs, okay? Now, I can look at this right now and see there's no decimal here, and there's 1 in this one. There should be one spot to the right of that. So I go over here, and I want you to make it nice and big and bold, okay? That's one part of this. But you also have to do a number model. Okay, so 56 stays as it is, or if you wanted, you could do 56 up to 60, because it is estimating, times 4.2. What's the 4? What's the 2 make the 4 do? Stay the same. Okay, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, that's 300. I'm not too far off. Those should be pretty close. But this is the number model they want. They want you to estimate. So what's 56 closest to, and what's 4.2 closest to? What whole number is the decimal closest to? So I did 60 and 4. And that's how you do those. All right. And the very last problem, which most kids did not get right, but it is something you will all get right now because you're so smart. It says, Miss Wyan is tiling her floor in a colorful pattern. She knows what color she wants to use and what percent of the floor each color should be. Okay? Now remember, percent has to equal what? 100, Miss Khaki. So if I had a 40 here, and I had a 25 here, and I had a 20 here, and I had a 10 here, and then I had a blank here, and then the total needs to be what? 100%. You're finding out what number's missing. So I would count 40 plus 25 plus 20 plus 10 to find out what goes here because it has to equal 100. Perfect. All right, and then she says find out how many tiles of each color she needs. Okay, so she's gonna do 40%. How would she say she has 100 out of 100? So 40% out of 100 is going to be blue. It says it right there. So the way I'd write this is 40% out of 100. Ooh, I'm wrong. It says 160. I didn't see that. She's got 160 tiles. Okay. So 40% of 160. You will see it on the page. It says that. Sorry. 40% of 160. Okay, so I'm going to block these off because now I can do this easily. And how many times does 10 go into 160? I'm just going to do that out because 10, 1, right, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 16. So then I'm going to do 16 times 4, 6, 12, 18, 20, 6, 12, 18, 24, 4, 5, 64. So this first one will be 64. So you have to color 64 of the squares blue. And then 25% of 160. And then 10% of 160. Okay? So you do just like I did here to find out what the tiles all need to be colored, and then you need to go and fix that. So I would do it in Notability. It would be a lot easier, and then you can go and you can color the squares doing that part. So friends, that is basically all that's going to be on the test. I know this took a while. If you watch through it, you should ace this test tomorrow. Practice some of them, and that's all I got. Bye.